Well, we're going to get started. We'll talk about the science of selling, but how it relates to the predictive index. And just a disclaimer here, gang, for those of you that don't know, we do have a sales and influencing training that we offer with the predictive index, but that's after people get up and going with the predictive index and its data. What I'm going to walk you through today is just a little bit about that, but more importantly, I think what a lot of companies forget is when we're talking sales is everything that goes into that, right? And what I mean by everything is going back to the whole idea of talent optimization. Okay. Aligning your talent strategy with your business strategy. What kind of salespeople do you need? Do you need a certain kind of person on the front end versus the back end? I just had a meeting, just got out of a meeting where we were talking about overlapping the sales team and who needed to do what and who are the best positions for that. In this particular case, it was just the difference between outside and inside sales team and how those things differ and who's going to work best in those positions. But it was also trying to think about who we needed to move around to put the right person in the right seat. As we look at talent optimization, that's what it's going to be. That design piece there is, designing, what's the talent strategy? Does it match with the business strategy? Is that going to get you the results that you want to get? And then the other piece there is really honing in your hiring. Those of you that, if it's just specific to salespeople, is what kind of salesperson do you need? Right? We have, I could think of one company that has three different levels of salespeople, and they're all three different profiles. One's very transactional, right? Which is fine. Okay. But if that person's not transactional in nature, they're going to struggle. The second piece is very consultative, which is what most of what we teach with the predictive index is that consultative sale, at least how to do that. And the third piece that they have is a very technical type of salesperson, which again is a different job target or a different pro. That's very technical. But those all three, once they honed in on those three and got the right people in the right seat, then they saw their sales revenue really increase. But the other piece of that, as you all know, the inspire piece is what are we doing with those salespeople? How are you bringing them on? How are you onboarding them? Once you get them, how do you keep them? Or how are you going to coach them? So hopefully we'll have time to go over that all today. And then diagnose. What are you doing? What are we doing from year to year? Does that have to change? Do our sales teams get bigger? If we have a sales team that's doing really well, can we transition those same analytics, what we know about that sales team, to create another department that's just the same? Last week, I was with a company up in New York, to give you an example of this. And what they were doing, they had their four buckets, and they called it a 4+1. So they had a new bucket that they were starting, and they were looking at, okay, who's the sales team on this particular vertical? Who's the sales team on this vertical, this vertical, this vertical, and this vertical? And it all looked a little bit different. But as they started, what they were noticing as, they had a lot of the right people. They just needed to switch them around a little bit. And I think they had a good plan coming out of that, but that's that diagnose piece, right? So you have those four aptitudes inside of there: design, hire, inspire, and diagnose. Those of you that are leading the charge with people, you should be looking at that. I saw that she's not on my screen anymore, but I saw Jennifer up there. I mean, she's that kind of person that kind of leads the charge for her company. And these are the kind of things that you want to put in front of your leadership team or in front of that sales department and think about these things, right? What kind of strategy do we need to have? Just because you were a good salesperson at one place, if you're coming onto our team, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a rock star here. But if you had maybe you weren't as successful in another place, maybe you're going to be more successful here when we design that and hire the right person and give you what you need to really succeed. So I want you to think about those things as we go through these next few slides. All right. One of the biggest things when we talk about successful selling is self-awareness. And we get into a lot of trainings where we're just doing predictive index and people don't even understand how they're wired. So that's one of the things you want to talk about. The other things that we're going to talk about today is how you are perceived by others. So those of you that are in that sales role, and I would say what we typically say is everybody's in sales. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? You could be the operations director. You're still in sales if you're influencing other people. You could be that person that mans the phones and it sits at the front desk. Technically, you're in sales. You could be one of the biggest salespeople inside of that company because you might be the first touch people have, whether they're a prospect, whether they're a client coming in. You need to understand this. So then your natural strengths, we'll talk about that and how to develop this inside of your company. And then the other thing we're going to talk about is maybe those development opportunities, either as you as salespeople or as influencers or your team. So those are the things that we're going to discuss today. As a reminder, because some of you I don't necessarily not sure where you're coming from, but don't recognize some names on the call here. That's okay. But just to give you a little outline of where we're looking at when we talk about the self-awareness and how you should think about your sales team when we look at PI, when we look at can versus will versus skill, we have the head, the heart, and the briefcase. So if you want to think about that and break it up first, like if you're just hiring someone as a salesperson, you want to do your due diligence with the job target, meaning you want to think about what kind of person is going to thrive in this position. What we typically do is we back into it by creating a job target that's behaviorally based and cognitively based with our clients. As the example that I used earlier, transactional, consultative sale, and then a very technical sale. Those are three different profiles. The cognitive ability was still fairly high as far as score goes for each of those three positions. However, the behavioral drives, the behavioral target was completely different for those three. And for that particular client who's been with us for quite a while now, made a world of difference. Okay, because the technical sale was a much longer sales cycle. It was typically at least 8. The short end of it was 8 months. It could have went all the way up to 18 to 24 months. So that person needed to be patient. They needed to have follow through, but they needed to also have the technical expertise in that sales position. Then you have your heart, right? This has to match your values. We talk a lot about core values. Does that person want it? I fairly good at sales, I would say, as some of you are on here, but do you want it? Right? Do you understand what it is? I don't think I could just go out and sell insurance. I wouldn't be that good. It doesn't get me excited. But there are other people that I've met we have several clients that do that, either health insurance, life insurance, car insurance, or whatever. They just absolutely love it and know it well. And it comes across. And then there's the briefcase. This is where you come in your company. What does our onboarding look like? The skills piece of it. And remember, please remember this as you all bring younger talent into your companies. Hire for drive, teach for skill. Hire for drive, teach for skill. Yeah, I'm thinking another person that's on my screen right now is Lindsay, one of our consultants. She doesn't know yet everything that we do, but when we had the discussion a long time ago about whether she would be a good fit, I said absolutely, because I had her PI, I had her cognitive, all that stuff. I said, you're just going to have to learn the briefcase. You're going to have to learn what we do. You're going to have to know the knowledge, the skills, and experience. I can teach you that. What I can't teach her is how to be who she just naturally is. Does that make sense to everybody, especially if you're just hearing this for the first time? Because if you want sales success inside your company, you can't put somebody in there inside a consultative sales role that doesn't like to be consultative, that isn't a little bit assertive and social, and expect them to do well. You're setting them up for failure and you're setting your company up for failure. The due diligence comes when you do the job targets and put the right person in there. And then you go down to the briefcase and give them the skills, the knowledge, and the education that they need. And that's going to develop the experience. And what you should have then is they should just naturally get progressively better at that. But that's where the manager falls into that piece. So let's take a PI behavioral pattern. We're talking about self-awareness. How well do you know yourself? Those of you that are familiar with PI, this would be more of a consultative type of person. We have the high B, so it's very social, low C, high B, low C, very quick to connect. This person's also very flexible, high B, lower D. And again, this is about the self-awareness piece. This could also be a person that's right out of school that may not feel like or may lack the confidence to be consultative in their sales approach. This is where we come in and we teach the skill. What I want you to do is I want you to think about the target versus the person. Where's the person at? So if it's you, all right, I'll use Lindsay again because I don't think she minds me using her. Maybe she could have a little dialogue with us here later on. Right? She's a high A, high B, low C, low D. What does she need in terms of that self-awareness? Because there are going to be people that she sells to that are wired like me, that's going to be easy. We're going to have an easy time getting along. But if she goes into every sales appointment acting like that, she'll probably only get to that close 25 to 50% of the time. She'll be missing a big population of people if she doesn't understand what she's bringing to the table. And maybe, here I need to slow down with this person. Here I need to stop and answer more questions. Here I need to be even more collaborative than I already am. Those are those things where your salespeople are going to say, oh, I have great self-awareness. But I always go back to the research study on self-awareness. If you want to look it up, it's a TED Talk by Tasha Eurich. Her last name is spelled Eurich. And what she did is she did a research study on 5,000 participants on self-awareness. And what she found, or research found, is that 95% of those people felt like they were self-aware. But in all actuality, what they found out was only 15% were. So all of you on here that either are in that sales position or even as a manager or director or owner that think you have good self-awareness, how much do you actually have? And then what do you need? Because sales sometimes gets a little stressful, especially when we're in front of somebody new. When you're not aware of that stress, the drives that you have, so if you look at your drives, those are probably going to escalate a little bit. If Lindsay, right, being a high B, if she's not aware of when she gets stressed, she walks into a social situation, a sales situation, and she's not aware of those things, she's just going to naturally do what comes natural to her, which is be more talkative. Well, that's fine if it's me. If it's the other Eric that's on the line, that might not go over as well because he's not quite as social as I am. And he would say the same thing, right? Right. He's at lower B. So what do you do when you're in a sales situation like that? You have to adapt. And this is all about using the data to adapt your behavior. But if your salespeople don't understand what that is or don't understand themselves, you're putting everybody at a disadvantage. This is where you want to review that PI all the time, especially if it's with your sales team. My suggestion would be at least once a month going over something and giving just a little coaching nugget. It doesn't have to be huge and profound. It can be just spending 5 to 15 minutes saying, okay, guys, all of us have a low C. We're all very impatient. What does that mean when you have somebody like for us? I'll give an example for us. When we involve ourselves in a much bigger company, there's a lot of red tape that you have to jump through initially. So that sales cycle is going to be a lot longer. You're going to have to talk to more people. Well, if I lose patience with that and just move on to something else, I might have lost that whole opportunity. Another good example might be maybe I'm talking to somebody who needs a lot of questions answered. Maybe they're a really high D, and maybe I'm a really low D. Well, if I don't take time to answer their questions, then again, I'm missing an opportunity just by that self awareness. What I want you to understand is we need to kind of drive those things down inside our company to help people understand that. And again, one of those exercises could be something as similar to this. It doesn't have to be big and profound. I used to have a colleague years ago. He's retired now, but he was a really high A, really high A, 3 sigma high A with an arrow to the right. So he needed to have his thumbprint on things. He was very assertive. He was very competitive. And one of the things that I noticed is that when he got into a sales situation with another high A, they would almost end up arguing about things, going back and forth. And one day I approached him. I'm like, hey, look, if you just didn't need to be right, imagine the amount of other clients we would have, right? Because I saw him leave one appointment, and it was actually, man, this has probably been at least 10 plus years ago. But he was with a client, and the client said something that was very kind of off putting to him. I thought it was kind of funny. And I'll actually tell you what he said because I remember it to today. So, a very big client. The gentleman was also, we were talking to the CEO. He was a high A as well, but he actually said PI is like the Taco Bell of behavioral assessments. And so my business partner didn't like that too much, and he didn't like the assertiveness. This guy was just trying to make a joke, but unfortunately, my business partner got up and left in that situation, and I was like, "Whoa, man, that was a lot." And we ended up losing the business because of that interaction. When really all it was is just two high A's going after it. Uh, the other piece that I like to point out here is the B drive. right? You don't have to be a high B to sell well. It depends on what you're selling. Okay. Some of the best salespeople that I've witnessed are actually that low B because they tend to be a little bit more thoughtful. And especially like in a technical position, say it's like engineering services. Like think about who you're selling to as well. Right. I don't think too many engineers want a Three Sigma high B coming in and just talking to them all the time when they want things to think through. Again, this goes back to thinking about the job target, what we really need in that position versus what we have. And this is where the power of the PI comes in. Person one, person two. All right. Um, Person one can be a great salesperson. So can person two. It depends on what we're selling, who we're selling to, what's the selling environment. But they're all going to do it differently, both of these people. One person's going to do it in a very consultative manner, where the other is going to be a little bit more technical, more formal. They're both very proactive, high A, low C. Okay. But think overall game plan, think overall strategy. All right. And then when we talk about things like that, when we think about overall strategy, we come at it from a customer focused viewpoint. And this is something that is it's so simple but yet so profound when we work with our clients, when we go from PI and then we go and do our sales training. And why I mean it's so profound but yet simple is, Lindsay, you can take your volume off here. I want you to interact with me a little bit. You've heard this, right? Because we do the same thing. Whose world's bigger here, Lindsay? I'll give you an easy question here. Is it me or is it my client's world? Whose world's bigger in this picture?
The client.
The client. Wow, profound, right, guys? But how often have you been with a salesperson that doesn't ask you questions, just tells you what they have to offer? Here's what we can do for you. Here's what we can do for you. Here's about me, 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 me. Once you explain this to your salespeople, they'll go, "Oh, that's very profound," and they'll shake their head, but then they'll get into a conversation and then they'll go back and make their world bigger again. All right, you ready for question two, Lindsay?
Mm-hmm.
In this particular slide, whose agenda is bigger, mine or my client's or prospect?
The prospect.
The prospect. Man, you're 2 for 2 today, Lindsay. You're having a great day. What happens, guys, when we make it about them? Think about maybe your best client, or we have a lot of best clients, right? Think about those ones and versus a prospect that where you've not been on the same page as them. Because a lot of salespeople, what they'll do is they'll see this and say, that makes a lot of sense, Eric. But what if I never get to tell them about what I do? What we're seeing here is when your world enters their world and when your agenda enters their agenda, those two things can be highly complementary to one another. And that's what we need to understand. That's what our salespeople need to understand. That's what anybody that is working for our company needs to understand. Because when I have a bad experience anywhere, so if I go to a retail store and somebody's in there helping me and I have a bad experience, that's the flavor I have about that company until somebody changes my mind. But if you can understand their world and their agenda better than anybody else, what do you think your chances of getting their business are? Now, take that same perception with a prospect, take it internally because all of you sell internally. You have internal clients. We call them employees. What happens when you know their world and their agenda better than anybody else? Engagement rises. Okay. When engagement rises, we know productivity rises. Everybody's happier. It creates a good culture. This little perspective shift, what happens when we have this shift is when we learn to sell from that other person's agenda, the world starts to open up. We sell faster, we sell more often. And the thing that I like about it for me is that those long-term relationships happen. When we've had our clients 20 plus years. And then it's a conversation, right? Think about shifting your perception into that consultative manner, regardless of who you're talking to. And then it becomes a conversation. When I get with a new prospect or a potential client, or even a potential employee, it's not an interrogation like many of us have probably felt with sales before. It's just a conversation and a facilitation.
Good morning. I hope you are enjoying this episode of Center for Victory podcast. My name is Caleb Cole, and I'm inviting you on our adventures. Check out the Center for Victory website under the Experiences tab and join us on some of the most epic adventures in the U.S. Let's go.
So let's talk about why people buy. All right? Why they buy. How do they buy? Now, some of you have heard this before, but it's worth remembering. This goes back to our whole self-awareness piece. How self-aware actually are you of what you're bringing into that sales environment? All right. I'll use Lindsay again, right? She's very, very similar pattern to mine. If she's my prospect and I go in and because I like to talk, I don't listen and I talk over her, how do you think that's going to fall? Lindsay, how do you think you're going to feel in that environment when I'm talking over you and never let you get a word in?
Well, I like to talk too, so I'm feeling shut down, unheard, misunderstood maybe, or just kind of
Okay.
like a fire hose.
Yep. And that's what happens. And then she goes, I thought I wanted this. They're not good at listening. Yeah, maybe I'm kind of done. And then I never hear back from Lindsay. If I take this and if I want to know better the other person, so let's assume that I know me well now. How do I get to know that other person? How do you think they're going to buy? We look at, and a lot of people ask us this. I mean, I got asked this 2 times last week, but there are different buying styles. And this comes from the research of Carl Jung. Okay. So think about when you're with somebody new, and you can try this with anybody, and I would practice it because you want to practice it so that when you get in front of somebody that you want to influence in some way, you're thinking about it. It all relates back to what we just saw in the previous slide, how quickly people are talking and what they're talking about. All right, very simple. It's not the end all be all, but you can get a good understanding of how they buy by looking at these 4 quadrants. If somebody is talking at a slower pace, they tend to be more patient. But yet they are people oriented, so they're talking about people. They're going to be what we call a cooperator. And I'm going to go through each one of these with you. If they're talking quicker and about people, they're going to be what we call an expressor. But if they're talking quicker and it moves to task orientation, now they're going to be a controller. And if they move from talking to a slower pace, but are task driven, that's an analyzer. Who am I talking to? Know their world. With that in mind, right? You want to understand their buying style. How do they buy? When I look at a controller, think about somebody, and if I were to put these in PI terms, this would be somebody with like a high A, maybe a lower B, lower C, kind of a type A personality is what we would call that. What do they want and how do they buy? They need to be right. Okay? If I constantly argue with them, I'm not going to get anywhere. So what they need is options. They want to be efficient. If I'm very people oriented, I need to move that to efficiency. What's the ROI? Big thing here, give them control, or at least let them perceive like they have control. For some of us, this might be the most difficult person to sell to. However, the nice thing about it is, at least from my perspective, once I get them on as a client, they tell me exactly what they want. Okay? And I know where I stand with them because they're very to the point. Right? Hurts a little bit in the sales process, but if you can get it dialed in, it's nice to have. But just remember, let them have control, give them options. The second type of person, an expressor. An expressor would be someone like I just used with Lindsay. What happens if I continually interrupt her and I don't let her share her ideas? Folks, sometimes this is the easiest person to sell to as long as you slow down and shut up. They'll talk, right? And I know because I am one, right? You just need to listen. I kind of know what I need in my head, right? Maybe Jennifer can relate to this because she's a little similar to Lindsay and I. Just let me talk it through. And by the end, I'm like, hey, thanks for listening, Jennifer. I'm ready to go with this when you are. And Jennifer's like, I didn't really say anything, but actually, here's just the next steps. I'll send you the contract. And I'm like, thanks, man. Jennifer's great. All right. Salespeople, here's what I want you to remember about an expressor, right? Because they love to talk. If you do a good job for an expressor, they'll tell everybody. But if you do a bad job for them, guess who they tell? Everybody. Okay? This is the one that you want to go back to as a really great salesperson and ask for referrals. They might not even know how to refer you, but if you show them how to, they're more than happy to. I know when somebody does good work for me, I always ask, hey, look, what do you need help with? Who can I introduce you to? Oh, I don't want to be a burden. No, be a burden, because like if you've done good work for me and I can refer you to Jim because Jim's my friend and I want good work done for him because I know he's dealing with the same thing. Let me make that introduction to you or for you. Does that make sense? But a lot of you aren't using that. But again, let the expressor talk. You might think, oh, it's not that easy. It is. I have expressors who I do coaching with. And Lindsay, you can back me up on this one because you do coaching too. I have that expressor, so a really high B typically. I get on the phone with them for an hour coaching call. And I just say, how's it going? And then 50 minutes later, I get to talk. Then I give them 1, 2, or 3 things to work on. And they're like, man, that was a great call, Eric. Thanks a lot. Lindsay, can you back me up on that one? Does that ever happen to you?
Yeah. It's interesting
Okay.
too, because before I knew about PI, all of my coaching clients are social profiles. So as a salesperson and enrolling clients into coaching, I had all social profiles. So this has been helpful to learn about ways to work with other kinds of people, people with different
Mhm.
profiles too. But yeah, just let them talk. They will figure it out and they will figure out what they need.
The next one, cooperator. Think about this person. They're very collaborative. This kind of person does not like to be closed hard, meaning I could go the whole time, right? I've got 30 minutes, 45, 50 minutes with them, and it's been really nice. It's been really good. And then all of a sudden I come in with a hard close and they're just going to shut down. Okay. This is also the person that gives you the appointment a lot easier, but they also give everybody else the appointment a lot easier. Make sure you talk about relationships, the guarantees, take time to be agreeable, right? They like that cooperation and tie that into your presentation even. I know that might be a little bit easier for us when we get at somebody that's a cooperator because what we do is very people oriented to begin with. But think about who you're talking to and about who their boss or bosses may be, who their stakeholders may be. That's really important to a cooperator. And then the last one, this was the big aha for me years ago. Huge aha, really, was an analyzer because an analyzer is the type of person that was the hardest in the past for me to sell to because it was a longer sales cycle. When we look at just selling predictive index, it was a much longer sales cycle. And I don't have a lot of patience, right? Especially when other people are like, hey, I want a contract today. The analyzer, it's going to take a while, right? They need proof of things. They need testimonials. When I figure out that they're an analyzer, I usually have that 17-page PI overview and I set it on the table for them and say, "Hey, look, I'm just giving you this. You're probably going to want to read through it." And if they're an analyzer, they'll thank me 100% of the time. They'll thank me all day long for that because that's the kind of proof that they need. Okay? So they might need somebody else to call. They might need a technical, either online or a brochure, technical on a brochure, or they also might need somebody else to talk to. This is where I would defer to somebody very technical. All right. I actually have our account manager, Rodney. He's on the line. I would say he's much more technical than myself. And some of you have talked to him, so you know how much technical expertise he has with the new software. I mean, I'd have lost my mind by now. I would have no hair whatsoever with the new software. But he's really taken that and run with it. My point is here, when I learned that about analyzers, they have become some of my best clients because they follow the best practices that we teach more often. And so these are the ones that have actually that stay longer once they get onboarded. The problem is they just have to be careful and be patient with them in the onboarding process because it could take typically, from my experience, anywhere from 4 to 8 months longer to get somebody to sign a contract that's an analyzer as opposed to an expressor. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. If I stop there, are there any questions with any of those 4 social styles or anything?
Hey, Eric, are you going to provide this deck to us after?
I cannot provide the deck because it's proprietary software. I can
Cool.
send you some things, but the video will be there, so you
Oh, I
will
meant
have
the
the
video.
video
Yeah,
sent to.
because I missed the
Yeah,
one before analyzing. I have controlling, expressor, and I got caught up, and then now we're on analyzing. So I missed that third one.
cooperator.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, you will get the video, Randy.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. Can I throw another level on here for you guys? Is this helpful or is it too much? All right. So I'm going to throw another level on here. I'm going to talk about backup styles. Okay. Why understanding backup styles? So we talked about the social styles, right? Backup styles are what happens when we don't understand the person that we're talking to, when we're not in their world, when they get uncomfortable, they'll hit their backup style. What I want you to do, if you're that salesperson and you get in front of somebody and they'll hit their backup style, I just back up. Say things like, hey, I'm sorry, or whoa, maybe I wasn't listening. Let me just back up here. If you don't and continue to push, you're going to get more of that backup style. And what that looks like for a controller, it looks like they go into boss mode. They will tell you more, exactly everything they know. When you get the expressor, they will go into attack mode and it won't be pretty. Okay? So just back up. All right? Because if they feel attacked, Lindsay gave a good example of that. If they feel attacked, they'll typically attack back. If they're a cooperator, it still might feel like a good appointment because they're just going to give in and they might cooperate and just give you the head nod just to get you out of their office or off the Zoom call. And what's ironic about that, and it's happened to me in the past too, is man, you leave and you think you had a good appointment and you never hear from them again. They ghost you. The analyzer is going to completely avoid you. So when they go dark, again, just back up a little bit. It's knowing yourself and then knowing others. The biggest thing, right? And we can all agree that we need to get better at this one word, listening. You cannot drill this enough for yourself. All right. Or for your salespeople. We have some folks in our companies that listen better than others. But if you are a high A and a low C, you think you listen well. I have news for you. We don't. It takes practice. And I will tell you in my home and in my company, one of the things that I can appreciate most about my wife, and she's the only one that's allowed to say this to me, is she will preface things, if they're really important, she will preface them with the word listen. So I know, oh, this is really important if she's prefacing it this way. But some of us can only go so long with the listening. If you are a real high A and a low C, I don't think it's very advantageous for you to have appointment after appointment after appointment after appointment because you're going to wear that fuse down. This is what I learned a long time ago when I used to do therapy. Okay, when I first got out of graduate school and had my own office, I would notice that after the third and fourth appointments with people that I would either just lose interest or, unfortunately, I hate to say this, I would start falling asleep. All right, because it just isn't natural for me to listen that long. And this even goes for those of us that are doing one-to-ones with our employees. Think about how well you listen and what's the length of time you can actually listen. If I'm stressed out all day long and I go into a new prospect meeting, I might not have the ability to listen as well as I do first thing in the morning. So some of us need to be a little bit more aware of what's going on in our environment, the subject matter. Now, when it comes to kind of PI and talking about behavior and helping people in problem solving, that's where my listening is really honed in. Okay. If we're talking about what we need to paint the wall, yeah, it's my listening's going to be limited. And that's the examples here. Think about the factors that impact effective listening. Again, if I start with whose world am I in? And that's where I try to stay. My listening is going to be on my subject, not meaning the person that I'm talking to, prospect, versus what I think I need to say. Because a lot of salespeople will get into these poor listening habits. I'm private planning. I'm rehearsing what I'm going to say. All right. So Lindsay's talking right now. I'm just thinking about what I'm going to say back to her. And when I'm thinking about that, I'm not really listening to what she's actually saying. I'm prejudging. Oh, I've heard this before. I know exactly what they need. Okay. That's an easy trap to fall into, even when you're a really good salesperson, is prejudging, right? Oh, I've heard this before. For us, it would be like, well, how many, you think about how many people situations that I've heard over the years, right? And when people say to me, I've got this unique situation at work with my employees, my brain initially goes to, I've not seen anything new in a long, long, long time. But instead of prejudging, I need to give them the benefit of the doubt and listen. Premature dismissing, right? Again, this could be a variety of facts, right? I need to talk, so I'm going to interject. I know what's right, so I'm going to interject. This person might not, it could also be what this person doesn't know what they're talking about, so I'm just going to dismiss them. Like if we're in an environment where we're doing a group sale. It could be, hey, this person doesn't hold as much weight. I dismiss them so I can talk to the person who's going to make the decision about this. You have to be careful with that. And then selective listening. None of us on this call have this, but I'll go over it. All right. We only hear what we want to hear. All right. And sometimes we only hear that which we need to sell to. This can be helped. All right. Getting in with your people, helping them understand, helping them listen to what's going on. All right. A bad environment could just be a bad phone connection. Hey, have you ever been on a bad phone connection with somebody? All right. It kind of detracts from everything. The speaker, and this is what I want you to understand, is how important just you and your skill. You don't have to know everything your company does to be an effective salesperson. You do have to know the speaker. That is you, and that's the person sitting across from you. Taking the time to really understand them. Where do they fall? Where do they fall? And for some of you that have been doing PI a while, and maybe you want to get a little bit better with a current customer, because this happened last week to me. They're like, I never thought I suggested that they have their best customer take the PI so they could better serve them. They're like, well, that's a great idea. Are we allowed to do that? I'm like, well, if it's going to help you and help them and help your company, why not? Like, and just share it with them. Like if I don't know anything about Tom, but I can get a real quick glimpse into how he behaves from his PI, and I say, hey, Tom, this is going to help me serve you better. I don't think he's going to object to that, right? If he's one of my best clients, he's not going to say that, Eric, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to spend 7 minutes to tell you anything about myself. That's ridiculous. He's going to say, absolutely, if it helps us, like if it's going to help you, help me, absolutely. Go ahead and do that.
Hey, Eric.
Yes.
So I have a customer that I've been trying to get him, like as a job interview, trying to get him to possibly consider coming on board. And it's probably not going to happen, at least anytime soon. But I was having lunch with them last week, and I did exactly that. I said, well, can I just go ahead and send you this anyway? And I I sent it to him like over the weekend, so I don't know if he's going to take it or not. I'll let you know.
Oh yeah, please let me know. Yeah. Please let me know. So development, guys. So development of these things. This goes for all of us. I don't think anybody in here would say they are perfect, right? There's all things we need to learn. You can learn this and help your sales team. So if you're having a monthly or weekly, bi-weekly call with your salespeople, the best thing you could do is help them is pull out the personal development chart. The personal development chart in the PI gives them their strengths, their cautions, and this way it's easier to work on that with them, right? Again, I'm going to use Lindsay as an example. This is hypothetical. This is not true, but like if she came in and she didn't have a lot of confidence with her B drive, right? She's a high B, but maybe she comes in and she doesn't see it yet. Well, I need to work on that with them. Like boost the confidence around that. It could go the other way too, right? I've had people that have been really high Bs, and that's the only muscle they use when they get in a sales appointment. And they might close a lot, but they're creating a lot of carnage too because the people that have said no, and like, I just want you to leave kind of way. It could also be that, hey, look, I need somebody that's strategic in the sales position. So I need a high A, low D. But if I have that low D, maybe it's, hey, look, you need to slow down and give your clients this piece of information, this piece of information. Just slow down long enough to do this. Are you asking the right questions? If it's a low C, maybe I'm speeding through. Maybe as a salesperson, I just need to be a little patient, right? Some of you, I know you're PI, so you raise your hand with me when I say we lack patience sometimes. Sometimes just have the conversation. Right? I was just talking to somebody here where I'm at, and that's one of the things that they said to me. They're like, I've just learned to be patient, and I've gotten better because I've just had conversations, not sales appointments. The other thing that you can develop with your people is also the coaching guide. Please don't dismiss this. Any of you that are responsible for sales, for a sales team, whether it's yourself and others, get the job target out and show them where they stand with things. All right. I don't know if you remember this, Lindsay, but when we first talked, I told you, hey, look, it's going to be a little tough at first because you're going to have to be in the weeds with a lot of things. Do you remember this conversation? Okay. But after a while, you get to fly. And that's what I look forward to. But it's going to be tough at first because we can't let you just go out and do everything when you don't know what A, B, C, and D are. But once you get it down pat, but at first, that first 3 to 6 months with any of our consultants, it feels draining and it feels like, oh, I don't want to do this. But after that learning curve gets hit, then it's like, okay, I just can be natural. And those are the conversations you want to have with people, because if you don't, like in that situation, in that conversation with Lindsay, if I don't have those conversations, and I know this from past experience, I'm going to lose a good person because they're going to go to about 3 to 4 months in, and they're going to be like, this isn't for me. I don't want to do all this detail all day long. And then the last nugget I'll have for you, and then I'll take some questions. Well, I got 2 nuggets, sorry. Is the relationship guide. So this is for you as a sales manager with your salespeople so you can guide them. So if you're not using this, please make this part of your repertoire with them in your one-to-ones with your sales folks. And then if you're looking at your sales team, and this is what I did up in New York last week, and we solved several issues and challenges just by looking at the sales team. Remember, I told you they had those 5 buckets across the board. We whiteboarded it, put those 5 buckets, looked at each team and said, who needs what? Here's what we're trying to do here. One sales team, actually, believe it or not, needed high D, high C, low A's because it was about customer experience. We already have these customers. They're long-term customers. They need good follow-up. They need somebody that's nice, that doesn't need to talk a lot, but that's really nice and helpful. We need good brand ambassadors. So what they did is they created a sales team that was low A, low B, high C, high D. Then they created another sales team that was very consultative. That would have looked like me, Lindsay, Jennifer, Tom, very high B, low C, lower D. Does that make sense? So if you haven't looked at your sales teams yet, go up. If you're in the new software, it's up in the right-hand corner now. It's the little analytics sign where you can go in and do that. If you don't know what you're looking at, though, please get with one of us and we'll walk you through that. I would say 9 times, well, more than 9 times out of 10, you should be contacting us when you're getting this far in it, though. Okay, so we can look at the teams and see what you have. All right, gang, until next time, we'll see you later. Take care.